Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down into the unknown, heart pounding, palms sweaty. Sound familiar? It's the classic feeling of fear, but this time it's not the fear of falling, it's the fear of failing. And let's be honest, failure has a way of messing with our minds, doesn't it? It convinces us that if we take that leap and stumble, we'll never recover. But here's a counterintuitive truth. Yeah, the fear of failure isn't protecting us, it's sabotaging our potential. What if I told you that holding on to this fear is like carrying a weight that keeps you stuck, blocking your growth both personally and professionally? And worse yet, what if the real reason for your stagnation isn't lack of ability, but the inability to let go of that fear? Curious? Well, let's dive into how freeing yourself from this invisible chain could be the most powerful move you've ever made. Understanding the roots of fear, fear of failure is deeply embedded in the way our brains are wired. Evolutionarily speaking, our brains have been conditioned to avoid pain and discomfort at all costs. Back in the day, this was crucial for survival. If our ancestors took a wrong step, it could mean the difference between life and death. Fast forward to today, and our brains still act like we're living in the wild, treating a failed presentation or a missed deadline like an existential threat. Neuroscience shows that when we anticipate failure, the amygdala, our brain's fear center, goes into overdrive, triggering that familiar fight or flight response. But here's the catch. The brain doesn't distinguish between real, physical danger and the emotional fear of failure. This is why people freeze up or avoid taking risks, even when failure has no real-life consequences. The solution? Begin by understanding that fear is a biological response, not a reflection of your true potential. When you frame fear as something natural, it becomes easier to navigate and ultimately overcome. Rewiring your brain to embrace failure. Now that we understand where fear of failure comes from, let's talk about rewiring that fear into something positive. The brain is remarkably adaptable, and this is where neuroplasticity comes into play. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. So, how do you rewire your brain to embrace failure instead of fearing it? The key lies in reframing your experiences. Every time you encounter a setback, instead of viewing it as a confirmation of your inadequacy, look at it as a lesson. The more you train your brain to see failures as opportunities for growth, the less power fear will have over you. Psychologists often recommend keeping a failure journal, where you document not only your failures, but also what you learned from each one. Over time, this habit retrains your brain to associate failure with progress rather than defeat, allowing you to push past limitations and move forward with confidence. The power of detachment from outcomes. One of the most powerful tools for overcoming the fear of failure is learning to detach yourself from the outcome. Often, people fear failure because they tie their self-worth directly to the results they achieve. If they fail, they feel like they are failures, and that's where the emotional spiral begins. But what if you could detach your identity from the results? Detaching doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop letting the results define who you are. When you focus on the process and the effort rather than the outcome, your brain shifts from anxiety about the future to being present in the moment. Neurologically, this reduces the activity in the amygdala and strengthens connections in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for rational decision-making. Athletes often practice this form of detachment. They focus on their training and leave the outcome, winning or losing, out of their minds until the moment of truth arrives. You can practice the same. Focus on what you can control, and the fear of failure begins to lose its grip. The growth mindset, turning failures into stepping stones. A crucial mindset shift that can help you overcome the fear of failure is adopting what psychologists call a growth mindset. Coined by Carol Dweck, the growth mindset is the belief that abilities and intelligence can be developed with time and effort. People with a fixed mindset tend to see failure as a reflection of their intrinsic limitations. They believe they're either good at something or they're not. On the flip side, those with a growth mindset view failure as a stepping stone for improvement. When you shift into this mindset, your brain starts to respond differently to setbacks. Instead of triggering the fear response, it activates areas related to problem solving and learning, helping you find ways to improve next time. You start asking yourself, what can I do differently, rather than why am I not good enough? This subtle shift transforms failure from something to fear into something that drives personal and professional growth. Building resilience through failure. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from setbacks, and it's a trait that can be developed through experience, especially through failure. Think of it like this: failure, when faced head-on, acts like a muscle. The more you work out that muscle, the stronger and more resilient you become. Neuroscience shows that repeated exposure to stressors or failures, when managed properly, can help the brain adapt and become more resistant to future challenges. The brain's prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and emotional regulation, becomes more efficient, making you less likely to be paralyzed by fear or stress in the face of new difficulties. To build resilience, you can start by embracing small failures, whether it's trying out a new skill or taking on a challenge that pushes you out of your comfort zone. Over time, these small acts of courage build up, helping you face larger setbacks with confidence and a clear mind. Redefining success on your own terms. One of the biggest reasons people fear failure is because they're chasing someone else's definition of success. Society tends to push rigid standards of what success looks like: wealth, status, or constant achievement. But the truth is, success is deeply personal, and when you define it on your own terms, the fear of failure diminishes significantly. By reflecting on what truly matters to you, whether it's meaningful relationships, personal growth, or creative fulfillment, you give yourself permission to fail without feeling like you've fallen short of expectations. The brain's reward system is activated not just by external validation, but by achieving goals that align with your core values. When you stop seeking validation through conventional standards and start aligning with what genuinely fulfills you, the fear of failure shifts into a motivation to grow and evolve on your unique path. Surrounding yourself with supportive networks. No one overcomes fear of failure in isolation. Having a supportive network can make all the difference when you're facing challenges. Surrounding yourself with people who encourage growth rather than criticize setbacks is crucial for maintaining perspective. Research in psychology shows that when individuals have strong social support, their brains produce more oxytocin, a hormone that reduces stress and helps them handle difficult situations better. Whether it's mentors, friends, or a community of like-minded individuals, these connections provide emotional safety, allowing you to take risks without feeling like failure is the end. Sharing your fears and failures with trusted people helps normalize the experience, reminding you that everyone faces setbacks, and more importantly, that those setbacks don't define you. In this way, your social network becomes a buffer against fear, encouraging resilience and reinforcing the mindset that failure is just part of the process. Taking small intentional steps. One of the most effective ways to overcome the fear of failure is by breaking down your goals into small, manageable steps. When we look at the big picture, the potential for failure can feel overwhelming, triggering the brain's fear response. However, neuroscience suggests that taking small, consistent actions helps to reduce the fear response by allowing the brain to experience gradual successes. Every small step you take gives your brain a hit of dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter, which reinforces positive behavior and motivates you to keep going. By focusing on incremental progress rather than the end goal, you shift your brain's focus from fear to achievement. Over time, these small wins build momentum, boosting your confidence and reducing the power that fear of failure holds over you. Start by setting micro goals and watch how each step forward lessens the intimidation of the bigger challenge ahead. Embracing failure as part of the journey. It's time to shift the narrative around failure. Instead of viewing it as an endpoint, we need to start seeing failure as an essential part of any success story. Most of the greatest achievements in history are built on a foundation of failures, each setback providing valuable insights that propelled the person forward. When you adopt this mindset, failure stops being something to fear and starts being something to embrace. Psychologically, when we reframe failure as feedback rather than a negative event, the brain responds with curiosity instead of fear. This curiosity activates parts of the brain associated with learning and problem solving, allowing you to extract valuable lessons from the experience. The reality is that failure is inevitable if you're aiming for growth. Instead of avoiding it, embrace it, knowing that each failure brings you one step closer to success. Turning fear into fuel for action. The final step in overcoming the fear of failure is learning how to turn that fear into a driving force for action. Fear, when harnessed correctly, can serve as a powerful motivator. Instead of letting it paralyze you, you can reframe fear as a sign that you're pushing your limits and stepping out of your comfort zone. both of which are necessary for growth. Neurologically, fear activates adrenaline, which can heighten focus, awareness, and performance when directed toward a goal. Athletes, performers, and even high-level executives often talk about how they use the energy from fear to fuel their success. The trick is recognizing fear not as a barrier, but as a signal that you're on the verge of something meaningful. When you shift from viewing fear as something negative to something that propels you forward, you'll find that it becomes a catalyst for action, not an excuse to stand still. Applying what you've learned, moving forward without fear. So what's holding you back? You now know that the fear of failure is nothing more than a mental construct, a trick your brain plays to keep you in your comfort zone. But comfort doesn't lead to growth, it leads to stagnation. You've got the tools to break free, understanding the roots of fear, rewiring your brain, adopting a growth mindset, and surrounding yourself with a supportive network. What's stopping you from taking that next step toward your goals, even if it means you might stumble along the way? Remember, every successful person has failed more times than they can count. It's the willingness to keep going that sets them apart. Are you ready to let go of the fear and embrace the journey, failures and all? If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe to the Good Brain channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss another powerful lesson on how to elevate your mind and life. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. What's the next step you'll take to move past the fear of failure?